Welcome back to my channel, guys. Today I will share the story of how I learned windsurfing, basically self-taught, to becoming one of the fastest windsurfers in the world. So my dad has always been a windsurfer, and like so many of us, that's the reason why I also got into windsurfing. And yeah, back when I was like 11, 12, 13 and I had my first windsurf sessions, we were actually sailing a lot on sailing boats, and my dad always had some gear with him on the boat, but it was very heavy and old gear, and I tried to sail on that, but I didn't really have fun because the gear was just way too big and heavy for me. And I only really got started at about 13 years old when my dad actually bought a kid's rig for me. And I think that was a 2.5 meter sail. And with that, it was very easy to handle. And I actually got some sessions in while we were sailing, mostly in Greece, like you can see in these pictures, which are like the first pictures I have of myself windsurfing. But yeah, back then I really wasn't getting too much on the water. It was maybe like 3 sessions a year. And I didn't really make progress with that little windsurfing and didn't get planing or any of that. So from the age of about 13 to about 17, I didn't windsurf all too much. So let's make a jump to when I was 17. Around that time, I was sailing mostly on my local lake, the Möhnesee, and I was sailing on my dad's old gear, which was the Mistral Equip, which is also the board I just used for the long distance trip. It's the same board. And he also had a Fanatic B, the green one. I don't know exactly how many liters it had, but it was quite a small board, and this was a very difficult board for me. So most of the time I was sailing on the race board. And the point where it turned for me and I really got more hooked into windsurfing was when I got my own first board for Christmas one year. I think that was the year when I was 17. And this board was like a free race slalom Nash board that was like not a full slalom board, but very close. And I think it was 78 centimeters wide and had around like 128 liters. And that was actually quite funny, because that Christmas, my dad actually gifted me an electrical saw, something like that. And like for 3 hours that Christmas, I was really depressed with that gift because I didn't know what to do with it until we were taking a walk outside. And my dad had the new board actually on the top of his car. And like, then I was like, what's that board? And that's like when my dad told me, you're not getting a saw for Christmas, you're actually getting your own first board. And yeah, with this board, it really became very fun for me to go windsurfing because it was like the perfect board, that it was a short board, which I haven't said before because the Fanatic B was quite hard for me to ride. And this short board, I really made my first planing runs and all that stuff on that board. And it had the perfect combination of being able to plane easily and having enough volume that I didn't feel scared like on the Fanatic B to fall in also when it was colder. So with this board, I made a lot of progress, and actually around that time, I met a friend in school who was also starting windsurfing at the same time, who is now actually like my best friend. So yeah, that was how I met him, because we were both windsurfing. And yeah, that of course pushed it to a whole nother level, because doing this windsurfing thing when you're 17, 18 by yourself is a whole different thing to doing it with a friend who has the same passion. And that's what really also hooked me more to windsurfing, and I made a lot of progress when I turned like 18 years old. But the whole time I didn't do any courses or have any teacher. I was basically going by myself a lot of the time, sometimes with my dad, who is honestly also not the best teacher, because if there's wind, he wants to go windsurfing himself. And I'm the same, actually. I'm a very bad teacher on the water because I want to go windsurfing myself. And yeah, so most of the stuff I just taught myself. And back then it was not so much stuff also on the internet. So it was kind of hard to figuring out techniques. And I put in the title self-taught. And yes, I taught everything by myself. But I think it cost me a lot of time, because the progress, I think, was much slower than if I had somebody who was teaching me all that stuff. But yeah, that's my story of how I got started. And yeah, then when I was around 18 and I was just about to finish school, or already finished school, I had my first bad breakup with like my first love. A lot of you guys know how that is, I guess. And yeah, at the same time with finishing school and I didn't really know so much what to do with my life, I went windsurfing more and more and more because this really gave me such a good feeling and a purpose. And windsurfing is so great for me, I think, because it's almost like meditation. When I'm windsurfing, I'm thinking about nothing else but the session, and it just gives me so much. And so I really developed this passion back then. And that's also when I created this YouTube channel. If you look back at my old videos, they were really, really crap. It was like with a 240p camcorder and just putting like 2 minutes of shaky footage, but I still had the passion and wanted to upload it. So this is how this YouTube channel actually got started. And yeah, then with going windsurfing so much already, I figured why not start or try competing. And back then, the series that I went for is the German DWC, the German racing series. And I did slalom there and also Formula then for my first competitions. And that was actually a lot of fun because it gave windsurfing this whole other aspect of competing, which is totally different from just going by yourself. But it was also really a struggle for me, I remember, because all the events were like at spots at the coast where there was a lot of waves, and I wasn't used to that as I was always sailing on my local lake, and on a lake it's just completely different conditions. You don't have any waves and the chop is completely different. So I was not doing too well there. I think the best results I got were like top 15 placings or something like that. So the other thing that I did simultaneously, what started to become fun, I bought this GPS and I tracked my speed. And this really got me addicted because then every session, if I went out also on my lake, I had a purpose and a goal. And I remember that the first big goal was to break the 30 knots barrier. And this was, I think it took me like more than 1 year. And I was going like, I remember all the time, like 29.8, 29.9 knots. And it was so hard to break this barrier. And I was buying, back then I was just buying used old equipment. So the gear was all over the place. It was like some slalom sails, some free race sails, and then like a Nash board and a JP board and just whatever I could find. But then I think with like a smaller board, like a 110 liters and like a 7.0, I broke for the first time the 30 knots barrier. And kind of got addicted to this speed windsurfing thing, to chase the numbers on the GPS. And for the next chapter of my windsurfing story, it was while I was studying from around, 19 years old to 26 years old. I was mainly sailing speed actually. And that had a couple of different reasons. First of all, the competitions at the German Cup were not so easy for me to do anymore because it was always coinciding with having exams and studying for stuff. So to have like fixed weeks where you go to the competition, and then it's also sometimes frustrating if you have no wind. And so for this reason, I got more and more into speed surfing. And that's actually also when I met Ralf Ebers, a good friend of mine, who really got me into speed surfing more and more because he at the time was already a really, really good speed surfer. And he taught me a lot, and we went on a lot of trips together. And yeah, to have this kind of guru for me who helped me a lot with my speed surfing technique, with the gear and everything, this put this whole speed surfing journey to a whole new level for me. And I'm really grateful for that he got me into this speed surfing scene. And yeah, this whole time when I was windsurfing, I didn't have any sponsors. I didn't really know how this all worked and how you get in contact with sponsors. So all the gear I bought was like just buying a sail here and there and a board here and there throughout the year. So it was a complete mix of gear from different brands and all that stuff. And then I remember like one time when I was doing a trip to south of France, on the last day of the trip, people broke into my car and stole all of the gear that was inside. So I did have some pretty fun sessions on the water in France. But the holiday came to a really shit ending for me, because overnight someone broke into my car, and as you can see, they went through the door and took almost all my gear. This is what I have left. I have one board which was in the apartment to dry and maybe 4 fins. So I'm back to 0. I have almost no gear left. So this is probably the last vlog for a couple of months, who knows. So that was like really depressing, because I spent years to put all this gear together and I was left with no gear at all. And of course, as a student, you also don't have just money to go and buy new gear. So that was really like a bad moment for me. But at the same time, this also gave me the opportunity to get in contact with sponsors, because again, Ralf was helping me out a lot here. And at the time he was sponsored by Boards and More. So he got me in contact with the guys from Boards and More back then. And they put up a really nice deal for me to get my gear back together. And I was doing more and more YouTube also at the time. So that's kind of how I could promote myself, despite not doing so many competitions like in slalom and formula anymore, but doing more the speed thing. And so yeah, that's basically how my first deal got started with Boards and More. They supported me. They gave me some sales and boards at a good discount. And so actually this bad thing of having my gear stolen was the opportunity for me to get my first sponsor, which I'm really grateful for both Ralf and Boards and More to support me at the time when I was really a nobody in windsurfing. And then with a sponsor behind me while studying, I also took the windsurfing thing way more serious, because you have like obligations to do stuff for sponsors and to actually compete in some speed competitions. So having a sponsor made this whole windsurfing thing way more serious for me. And I think also helped me progress to the next level. And at that time, I was really focused more on windsurf. Like I spent all my time thinking about windsurfing while studying, and spent every free day, and even some days that were not free, windsurfing when there was a good forecast and training speed. And yeah, I think I progressed a whole lot while studying. And this whole time while I was studying nautical sciences, which is basically the becoming an officer on the ships. I always noticed that it was not like really my passion, because while I was studying, a lot of people who I was studying with were really, all they were talking about was ships and seafaring. And I was always like, I am not so interested in this stuff. I want to do it to earn money, but it's not my passion. And I noticed that it was like nagging on me, because I was feeling like, why don't I have this passion for seafaring like other people do? And despite that, I was finishing it because I was already close to finishing it. So what were like 2 more years to finish it, and then you have a degree and you have the patent and all that stuff. So despite the feeling that it was not the perfect fit for me, I still finished studying and actually worked for 1.5 years in seafaring on different jobs. I was on gas tankers, and then I was on tugboats and all that stuff. But I was not very content with myself, because I was feeling that I was doing something I'm not passionate about, and that I want to be more in windsurfing really, which was my big passion. And then last year in 2022, I had the opportunity last minute to go to Lüderitz, because I actually found a sponsor who was supporting me for the trip. And there was an opening spot like the last minute. It was like 2 months before Lüderitz. And speedsurfing for already, 8 years now, this was always the big dream. I saw all the videos of Antoine Albo and all the guys going 50 knots in the canal. And to have the opportunity to go there myself was just amazing. All right, finally, it looks like we can get the first day on the canal after 1.5 weeks of absolutely no wind here at the canal. And of course, I pushed as much as possible to do YouTube videos there. And I actually went 49.99 knots there in the canal, top speed. So close to 50, right? But yeah, this whole Lüderitz thing and doing all the videos there, I think really put me on the map also more in the windsurfing industry. And that year before I went to Lüderitz, I was also actually changing sponsors because I was on 0.7 sales already in 2022. And then it was Lüderitz towards the end of the year. So while I was in Lüderitz, I was actually discussing with Andrea Cookie my deal for the next year because I wanted to do a whole lot more with the media stuff and all that. And I remember that like 4 days before I left Lüderitz, Andrea was like writing me, hey, you have some time for a call when you're back? And like, what does he want? And then when I got back, he called me and he basically offered me a job in 0.7 because I was also telling him that I'm not happy with the job I'm doing and that it's not my passion, that windsurfing is my passion. And so out of this sponsor deal came the opportunity to actually work for a windsurfing brand, which was, to be honest, never on my mind. I never thought I'd work for a windsurfing brand. So I was thinking about it for a couple of weeks, but then the decision was pretty clear to me pretty soon that I will do it because that was like my opportunity to do full-time windsurfing. Yeah, I think this is the best thing that happened to me because now I could really follow my passion. And of course, it's still work to work for a windsurfing brand. It's not like you're just sailing and have fun. It's a lot of work. It's a lot of work on the computer and all the stuff that's going on behind the scenes. But at the same time, this job also gave me the freedom to follow windsurfing even more because I work remote. Whereas before I was always working on the ship. So of course there you don't have any opportunity to go sailing. But if you work remote and you can make your own hours, you can just, if you have some hours with good wind, you can just go windsurfing and work before and after. So this gave me the time now to focus so much more on windsurfing. And I'm so grateful for that. So what does the future hold for me? And I was thinking about that a lot actually, because in the speed surfing thing, Lüderitz is like the biggest thing you can do. Of course, I went 49.99 knots. So for sure, it's on my mind that I want to do 50. And that's a project I will follow. But at the same time, I was kind of feeling over the last years where I was in Tarifa that I only discovered like a fractional part of windsurfing because I was always focused on the racing disciplines, on the speed disciplines. And there's just so much more to windsurfing, so many more spots to discover, but especially so many more disciplines inside of windsurfing that I've never tried. I've never gone wave windsurfing until like 1 or 2 years ago. And I've never gone race boarding, which I did now on this long distance trip or the last videos if you look on the channel. And so for the future, what I want to do is basically become a well-rounded windsurfer because I like this idea that you can do everything, that you're decent in waves, that you're good in speed and slalom, and also in foiling. And I think this also makes windsurfing so great because it's not just one thing. Windsurfing is so many different things in one. And there's always something to learn, especially now with starting wave windsurfing. And this is something I want to follow way more for the future, aside from the speed thing. And yeah, this is basically my full story of how I became a windsurfer and am now full-time working in windsurfing from starting out till now. I hope you enjoyed this story time video. If you did, I would be interested to know how you got started with windsurfing, because I think most of us got started because someone in the family or close to them was windsurfing. And that would be interesting for me to know. So yeah, leave a like, subscribe down below if you haven't already. Thanks also to my Patreons for supporting this channel. And I'll see you in the next video. Bye.